Good evening, Raven Nation, and welcome back to another season of Raven Rundown. I'm your host, Tyler Arago, and let me just start off by saying we here at FPTV are so pleased to welcome you back here to another school year and another year of athletics here at Franklin Pierce. I am thrilled to be back in the chair for the first time this year, and we're looking forward to delivering you all the happenings around Franklin Pierce University. But first and foremost, there's definitely some things that I'd like to get off my chest before we start getting into the scores and the stats of athletics. You've probably all heard of the tragedies that have struck our athletic department in the last couple days, in particular with the passing away of assistant football coach Nick Seymour and the most recent passing of the wife of head coach David Chadbourne, who coaches our men's basketball team here. Coach Seymour was an assistant coach for our sprint football team, and he passed away on September 27th from a car accident on the way to practice. Our hearts go out to both the Chadmore and Seymour family, in this tough time. These losses do hurt us tremendously on campus, but they also do unite us as a school and a community. And this episode, I am proud to say, will be dedicated to both Coach Seymour and Mrs. Chadbourne. With that out of the way now, we'll get into what's relatively been a positive month of September for Franklin Pierce, starting with soccer. So we'll first go into men's soccer, and they really have been nothing short of dominant this month. They got off to a 5-0-1 start before dropping their most recent game to St. Anselm's 3-2, and an undefeated run was largely thanks to the play of their goalkeeper Jadel Poon-Lewis, who was phenomenal his freshman season, backing that up with a stellar sophomore campaign. Poon-Lewis coming in with a goals against sub-1 and an .839 save percentage, career high marks for him. He was also the goalie of the week for the Northeast 10 Conference back on September 18th. He has been terrific for the Ravens and has been a key reason why they've been nationally ranked. They jumped up from number 24th in the nation, now sitting at number 21 for Division II soccer in the country, and a large part of that is thanks to their defensive play, but they've also had some electric offensive play as well. Freshman Yannick Felber out of Germany has come over and has contributed quite positively for the Ravens with 3 goals on the season, 2 of which have been game-winning goals. Coach Fink's squad, as we mentioned, coming off a 3-2 loss to St. Anselm's, their first loss of the season. They still sit with a strong 5-1-1 record, 3-1-1 in the NE10 as of now. They will close out the month of September tomorrow, September 30th, versus New Haven. Raven Sports Network will have the call of that game at 7 p.m. Now we'll be moving on to women's soccer, who's also had a very successful month of September. They underwent a lot of changes last season. A new head coach, Jonathan Garber, brought in from Monroe College out in New York, also bringing along with him 6 of his players, and those 6 players have really come along to contribute quite positively for the Ravens. In particular, defensive back Mark Determo from Barcelona, Spain, who's contributed with 2 goals, and striker Gabby Pereira, who's been the leading scorer of the Ravens since she first got here. The Belo Horizonte native has 4 goals and 2 assists so far on the season. As we know here on campus, our soccer teams are tremendously diverse, and this women's team is no different. Coach Garber alone has brought over with him 4 Brazilians, a Spaniard, and an American player, Tess Kozlowski. Returning players, though, have also been a huge factor, and one in particular that stands out to myself here has been goalkeeper Casey Cook. She got off to an electric start to her season, riding a 3-game clean sheet streak, for that was eventually snapped in a win to American International. But Cook, a Beverly, Massachusetts native, has been one of the best keepers in the NE10 for the women's division. She holds a sub-1 goals against average with 24 saves on the season, and she's also played in every single minute for the Ravens. And despite going through such a massive overhaul, the Ravens really have gotten off to a really strong start, sporting a 4-2-1 record, and they will close out the month as well on September 30th, but on the road against NE10 rival, the Assumption College Greyhounds. That's all we have for soccer, as now we'll get ready to make the shift over to sprint football. Our sprint football team is going to be on the road this Saturday at Navy, and what should be another incredibly tough matchup for this squad, coming off a brutal 51-0 loss to the Army last Saturday at Sodexo Field. Coach Watson and the Ravens, though, started their season off strong with a 24-21 win at home over Mansfield, but just did not have any answers to the powerful Army team and now sit at a 1-1 record. However, with an undersized roster, new head coach Rasad Watson has done a terrific job trying to find balance on offense and defense. I recently sat down with the head coach last Monday to talk things over, and he really gave me a good quote on his players and their effort. "These guys give me everything," said Coach Watson. A simple quote, but really effective. The score against the Army might show a very lopsided loss, but Franklin Pierce did hang in there the best they could for the majority of that game. And now traveling down to Annapolis for another really stiff opponent in the Navy, it will not be easy for these Ravens, but they certainly will rise up to that challenge. It really hasn't been all that negative of a season for Franklin Pierce. A lot of positives on the field, particularly the offensive side of the ball, which we all know struggled particularly last year in the passing game. But freshman quarterback Jared Lubis has already thrown for 254 yards and a touchdown. He's also thrown just one interception, and considering the kind of defense the Army had, that does say a lot. On the ground, sophomore running back Kobe Smith has also been a very positive force offensively, rushing for 163 yards, averaging nearly 4 yards a carry. He is dynamic as well. He's able to break free and gain big yards plays. He did have a rush for about 31 yards against the Army, but it was called back due to a penalty flag. Plenty of positives, though, offensively for Franklin Pierce going into this game with the Navy. They did lose last season to the Navy by a score of 38-8, but this Franklin Pierce team, under the new leadership of Coach Watson, could potentially give the Navy a run for their money, now a week rested and certainly motivated to try and get a win for their fallen assistant coach as they will play on Saturday at Annapolis. That'll wrap things up for our football coverage, and we move the chains now to field hockey. And field hockey is a very interesting sport here this season. After a real dismal 3-14 2016 season, which included them going 0-12 in division play in the NE10 conference, the Ravens have really bounced back in a big way on the field, starting off the year with 2 back-to-back shutouts. They sit now still above 500 at 5-4 on the season, which is positive considering the team never once was at that position last season. They've gotten some tremendous contributions from veteran leaders such as goaltender Meg Williams and captain Carly Canavan, but they've also gotten help from the incoming freshman, in particular Nicole McDowell, who has stepped in and contributed offensively with a pair of goals. The Ravens have gone up against some really stiff competition of late, playing 3 nationally ranked teams in consecutive fashion. They stole a game from Merrimack, who was ranked number 10 in the nation at the time, 2-1, and they recently fell at home to number 4 in the nation, St. Anselm's, by a score of 4-1. They will conclude the month of September against number 3 in the nation, LIU Post, tomorrow at Sodexo Field. And it's certainly a testament for this team going up against such talented opposition. Sitting at a 5-4 record has to be very positive considering what they were last year at 3-14, including winless in their division. They already have 2 wins against NE10 competition this season. And a large part of that, as we said, Meg Williams has been one of the best goaltenders in the NE10, and Carly Canavan has been lights out with 3 goals and 4 assists in 9 games played. And for the Ravens, though, it does not get easier. As we said, number 3 LIU Post coming into town tomorrow to take on the Ravens, who are 1-1 against nationally ranked opponents, though, this season. Now we're going to move on to some of the other sports here, including volleyball and tennis. And for volleyball, it has been an absolute brutal start of the month and of the season. They had a very solid campaign in 2016, but have since really fallen flat on their face. Started off the season very positively with a 2-1 record, but have since lost the last 6 games in a row. And their most recent game was a 3-1 loss against number 16th Merrimack in the nation, and find themselves now at 3-10 on the year. Struggles on the road have really plagued the Ravens as well. They're 0-5 away from the Fieldhouse, and they have not found much success off of campus. 0-4 during the Wildcat Invitation, which really started to kick off this losing streak for them. They will, however, have an opportunity to break that streak of 0-5 as they take on Stonehill College on September 30th. They'll be on the road for that one. As we near the end of the show here, we'll wrap things up with men's and women's tennis. And for men's tennis, They got their season off to a very slow start, but not due to poor play. Rainouts cost the Ravens their first 2 matches of the season, but they did go out to New York. They were able to get out there for the ITA regional tournament, and while for the most part, it was a struggle for the Ravens, one player was able to crack a quarterfinals appearance, and that was junior James Bizaza, who made a pretty remarkable run against some really strong competition. He opened the tournament by rolling over with 2 really dominant wins, 6-2 and then 6-0 over Wesleyan's Jose Carlillo. In the second round, he won 6-3 and 6-4 over junior Ricard Seck of Queens College in New York. Queens, mind you, ranked 3rd in the region as a team for men's tennis. And Bizaza was able to make quick work then. He then worked his way again through a Wesleyan opponent in Robert Hugo, winning those sets both 6-3 there. He would then go on to the quarterfinals, where he would lose to Southern New Hampshire University senior Tiago Fernandez, who defeated Bizaza 6-2 and 6-1. But seeing Raven make a quarterfinals appearance in a fairly large tournament for men's tennis, as men's tennis is regarded, is certainly something to be proud of here back in Rindge. Same cannot be said, though, for our women's tennis team, who has really struggled out the gate. They remain winless going into Saturday's matchup against Bentley, 0-7 on the season for the Lady Ravens. Back in August, the Ravens were projected to finish 11th out of 13 teams in the NE10, and right now that prediction seems to be pretty spot on for them, as they are 0-7 overall, 0-4 versus conference opponents, and they have gotten smacked around in their last few matches, dropping each of the last ones by scores of 8-1, only winning 3 sets in their last 3 matches. But they do have an opportunity to close out the season on a high note, as we said, on Saturday against Bentley, and we sure hope they can wipe that goose egg off the board and get 1 win here on their season. That is all the sports we have for you. That wraps up the month of September here at Franklin Pierce University. Episode 2 here for Raven Rundown will be on a monthly basis. We will get you your October recap towards the end of the month. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and go Ravens.